Easy to go live. It's like
Live,
kind of scary how easy it is, you know?
live from Santa Clarita,
It's
right?
a brave
Yeah,
new
total
world.
live at
It's
108
Tuesday. It's
degree
Tuesday
weather,
morning.
Santa Clarita. We are live on YouTube and on LinkedIn. Um, man, that is way too easy. Um, all right. Wow, Nigeria. We got Brian from Sodexo, Atlanta. Great. Got a good mix. Let me get some good eye candy. Oh, I just got the notification. Kevin Bromber's live on LinkedIn. Well, it's not Kevin yet. He should be joining soon, but what do we got? Phoenix, Tim also with Sodexo out in Phoenix. Phoenix, Atlanta, Illinois, Nigeria. We're covered. And more people joining. So yeah, just so Joel and Mark, for you guys, just a refresher, I'm going to pull up our quick agenda here. So
Yeah,
we're going to start here. Right now, we're just kind of open-ended here, but we'll start with a quick intro. I'll turn it over to you guys. I got a couple slides to introduce Vutility, and for everybody that's watching, we're just going to get Vutility on with us. Inventors of the HotDrop, one of my favorite devices by far. We've got 1,000 sensors that we sell through myDevices and in our app and everything. And I don't say it's my favorite device all the time. I swear. This is literally one that's really, really unique, and I think critical and timely. I mean, my electric bill is ridiculous. There's no electricity in California, it seems, where I live. And ESG compliance, right? Sustainability governance is a huge event that's happening and buzz right now. So really timely. So super stoked to have you guys on. So we'll go through a quick background. You guys can introduce yourselves and your company. We'll then, from the myDevices side, do the same thing and kind of lay the groundwork of who we are, what we do, but also how we work with companies like Vutility, hardware manufacturers, sensor manufacturers to, I'll say, enhance sort of capabilities of sensors and being able to mix and match, not just the HotDrop, but then throw in other sensors to kind of build a full solution that might be more horizontally focused, all in a single platform. Talk about integrations and the other apps and things like that. And then really the meat and what I'm most excited for is to dig into some real deployment stories, which I know you guys have some stories. We've got some stories. We've got some joint stories together. So lots of kind of what I was saying, sensors in the wild kind of stories to tell and talk about. So we'll get into that. And then for everybody out there, we'll open up Q&A right at the end. Don't hold on to your questions though. Like if they're coming, just throw them into the chat. I'll do my best to man the chat and get you answers live right now as we go. I would love for these webinars. I hate to just throw presentations in front of people and go through a canned process. Like if you guys have questions, we might divert the agenda a little bit to get those questions answered, because I think it provides more value to the viewers if we get them exactly what they want. But that's kind of a quick intro and a feel for how this is going to go today. I think at this point, I'll throw up these slides. Is that good for you guys,
yeah.
Joel, Mark, if we just kind of start
Whatever
here?
works for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're ready to go. So
yeah, let's jump right in. We've got a good chunk of people on, and we're 104. So yeah, let's go ahead with a quick intro from
yeah, absolutely. No, I'm excited to be here today. Really, really excited about the relationship we have with you guys at myDevices, Cameron, and just see some great work happening across a bunch of different industries through the collaboration. So really appreciate the invite to get to talk specifically about our solution and how that fits into what you guys do with your customers and partners. I head up our sort of anything customer facing and coming back to the organization from customers within Vutility. So that includes our sales and partnerships teams, marketing, our solution engineers, and even some of the technical support. So Joel Bernson, official titles, Vice President, Strategy and Partnerships. But I really care about the sensors when they get out in the wild. So this is my topics. I'm joined by Mark, who is Mark Michaels. He's our sales director. I think we're going to probably tag team a little bit as we go through what we cover today. I'll take the slides for now, but certainly as we get questions and as we talk about specific projects that we've done either directly with other organizations or with your customers, we'll talk through that as we go. So the product specifically that we're focusing on today, we have a couple other, we have another product that's in the energy monitoring space as well, but our primary product line is this one called the HotDrop. And that's really what I'd say our primary solution that's out in the market today looks like. I refer to them as IoT-enabled fitness trackers. So you think about what a fitness tracker means to us individually for our own personal health and well-being. It's giving you actionable data that you can, make decisions around. So, I made a point today to go for a walk with my dog. We went out in the woods, went for a hike for about an hour before I started work. I want to know how many steps I took afterwards. I want to know how many calories I burned. That type of data from a building, from different categories. Some of those categories are a little bit easier than others to get. There are a lot of great sensors out there. myDevices, as you know, has like 1,000 plus that they've been able to integrate into their platform. Air quality, temperature, vibration, there's all sorts of things that you can measure. One of the ones that's been the hardest to get real actionable data without breaking the bank has been energy. So that's where our organization put its focus. Our HotDrop product line is a non-intrusive energy monitoring solution, as you see there in the photo with the hand. I'm holding one up on the screen as well. It's really a domino-sized device that you can install in seconds. So what you're seeing there is the device is getting wrapped around the wire. It has a hinge mechanism that opens, and then it literally just wraps around the wire, snaps closed. There's a QR code that's on the device. That is our device and the onboarding process for it. And working with myDevices, it's a really smooth, seamless integration in getting the data into their platform from our devices. But what we are able to do, we inductively charge and harvest power from the circuits that we're monitoring to keep the device self-powered. So there's actually no batteries, there's no wires to maintain the device, and we're able to deliver data on a minute-by-minute basis over LoRaWAN, which is really incredible. It's very unique. As you see in the picture, there's different sizes that cover different scenarios, different use cases. The one that I was holding up before is often used for monitoring individual devices and assets, or sub-metering, maybe like in a tenant billing application. But we have giant ones that go up to 4,000 amp that can go in on bus bars and monitor the mains of a large commercial or industrial facility as well. So that's really high level about the devices themselves. Very unique, very compelling, and closing that critical gap from a fitness tracker perspective in the built world around energy. With that data, if you want to jump to the next slide, I think there's a variety of use cases that we see out there in the wild, so to speak. We actually, as an organization of utility, don't specialize in any of these because we see the data as sort of equally valuable across a number of different use cases in a number of different industries. But working with partners like myDevices and ultimately with the myDevices partners and their organizations, we're addressing a lot of these different use cases in market. So we see things like sub-metering equipment inside buildings for, say, an M&V audit, understanding, measure and verifying, here's a baseline for performance. Using that fitness tracker data, we introduce a change in the facility, and then we can verify that improved the bottom line, improved the efficiency of the building. As Cameron mentioned, ESG, environmental, social governance as a sort of reporting requirement for a lot of organizations to their shareholders and other stakeholders. Getting that data can be very difficult. Getting at verifiable energy data. So we're helping close those gaps from a reporting perspective. EUI is something that's often referred to as energy usage intensity, building performance standard type data that different cities and municipalities, even states, are requiring now. And you want to be able to verify that you're in compliance or you can get penalized. So helping businesses solve that. We participate in demand response programs. And then there's other things, I don't think a lot of people would be shocked how much of their energy bill actually goes to what's called their peak capacity tag. So if you use above a certain threshold of energy, you'll be in a completely different cost category. It could be up to 80% of your bill just by being penalized for using more energy than you may need to. So being able to help people understand that and get their energy use under control. Ultimately, what we're able to do with our solution, because of how unique it is, that total cost of ownership, a lot of that is often driven by the installation complexity, having to de-energize a facility, having to hardwire it and run conduit. We eliminate all those barriers by having this self-powered instant install device That ultimately leads to up to 90% savings across a lot of different use cases, and that ultimately means more opportunities and more ROI. And I actually think the use cases we're talking about today, I think primarily, we can jump around and talk about a bunch of them, but this remote asset critical equipment monitoring use case that we're going to talk about today, and then being able to drive, preventative maintenance and things around that. Just super powerful. It changes how a lot of different industries are managed. It changes how, remote field services teams are dispatched and, sort of prioritize where they concentrate their efforts from a maintenance perspective. So real excited to talk about all the use cases. Can't wait to see what questions come in and help answer those as well. And, thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and thanks for that background and info. Super helpful. There's already some questions I think that popped in the chat, so we'll address those in just a sec.
My CTO's in the webinar as well as a guest. So if there's something real technical, he'll probably just answer it directly.
Bring it on. Bring
Thank
your
you, Michael.
questions. Yeah, so you said something interesting, Joel, in the beginning, and it's about the cost savings. Like obviously energy monitoring, you can ask anybody and they're going to say, yeah, it's important. And you say, well, why is it important? And there's a wide variety of reasons. We could talk about ESG, we could talk about the grid and losing access to electricity and needing to reserve and all of that. But so why hasn't there been more adoption of energy monitoring now? And what are you guys doing, or what does this particular sensor do to kind of bridge that gap and make it easier?
It's a great question. I think it's often challenging to make that ROI case using conventional technologies. We have an example with one of our partners. I talk about 90% savings because but my CEO is not worried about me having that challenged. But I actually have a real life use case with one of our partners. They did phase 1 of a project. It took them 8 months to get between approvals and then all the work from an installation perspective to get phase 1 done using conventional technologies. And it was a $400,000 project, capital intensive project. Really just to monitor this one asset in sort of a field services setting for an industrial application. They came to us after phase 1 and said they wanted to try using the HotDrop for it. They had found out about it. They wanted to test it. And it was sort of a real low stakes, if it doesn't work out, no big deal. They wanted to test it and see what it could do in comparison. Phase 2 was entirely done using HotDrops. It was done for under a couple $1,000s in under 1 afternoon. And that's the exact same scope of work as what that first 8-month project looked like. So
and conventional methods being things like hardwired and other
and then you're dealing with the backhaul to get that data to the cloud in a lot of cases. There's a ton of people walking around, popping thumb drives in and then downloading stuff and then uploading it into a Google Drive. And there's a lot of manual steps and a lot of labor intensive steps that we eliminate by having this be cloud enabled, by having it be non-intrusive and instant install. So that creates those ROI opportunities. There's, I think, the stat that I've seen over and over from, the Department of Energy. It's about 40% of the energy in buildings is wasted. But you just don't know where it is. So unless you get that granular insights, unless you're proactively monitoring, you're never going to have control over where it's going.
And that's probably a good segue here. I think we can probably go down this rabbit hole for like the next hour straight and talk about. There's so much here to unpack. But I think where we fit on the myDevices side, and we've got Kevin Bromber, our CEO, on as well. So Kevin, I'll send it to you to just do a quick intro in just a sec. But so what happens with the myDevices side is you're right. There's you can monitor energy. 90% of the building, we don't know where that energy is going or what's hogging it. Basically, is it something running inefficiently? Is something defective? Are we overusing? Are we underusing? So the combination, so you can put the HotDrop on equipment to see what's going on. Is the refrigerator pulling too much energy? Is the HVAC? Is the building itself, right? Because you've got the larger CTs you saw on that first slide. You can do small appliances or large ones. And then on our side, from the myDevices side, if I pull up our website and our store, we've got over 1,100 sensors that we've integrated into a single application. So by combining the HotDrop, which is sort of the magic device where you can just clip this thing on and see what's going on, but then you can start to monitor other sets of data off of that same piece of equipment that's not related to the HotDrop, maybe vibration, maybe fan speed of an HVAC, maybe air differential pressure. and you get that next layer of visibility that says, yeah, it's using electricity, but here's why, and here's the problem that it's having. So it becomes this more predictive maintenance kind of issue. And there's some other things too that we'll show within our dashboard that allow us to take the HotDrop data and manipulate it a little bit via some level of user input, like voltage, run times, and start cycle times and ends, so that not only are we getting, hey, how much energy is this machine pulling, but what is the actual runtime of this machine in a 24-hour period, 48-hour period, 70, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And is that consistent over time? Or are there times when, like, why is this thing running for 22 hours on a certain day? Like, what's going on there, right? So, we'll jump into all of that and show some detail there as well.
I'll throw out one thing, because you mentioned a few things that just prompted some stuff that we've seen in the market that's real interesting. And I know, one of the great things, sort of in our DNA, and I think in yours as well with myDevices, is having services built on top of data and being able to enable solutions that would have been difficult to otherwise. So we've seen, sort of in this COVID and post-COVID world, a big swing from facility managers being sort of measured and graded on energy efficiency in their building to safety and well-being in the building as well. So for a lot of buildings, they're essentially running their HVAC 24/7. They're circulating outdoor air in constantly, and that air, you mentioned you're at 108 today at home for you today. Trying to get that 108-degree air back down to, say, 72, 74 degrees, that's a lot of work and a lot of strain on your equipment to do that. And they're sort of doing it blindly just to ensure that they have the best quality air at all times in the building. But combining data sets on air quality, combining data with energy, I mean, there's a ton of optimization opportunities when you have visibility to both sets of data. And I think that's ultimately where, a lot of the industry is moving towards, is how do you optimize for sort of multiple high priority deliverables in a facility?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
I was just going to say, it's really interesting. Like, you're looking at one of the data points here on a HotDrop, and I was really excited when we added this into the interface. What you can see here, so you snap that little sucker on, right? And you see the total amount of energy used, the total amount of energy used in the last hour, the total amount of energy used in the last 24 hours. You've got runtime. So how long has the machine been running for the past 24 hours? In that situation, 55 minutes. How long was it down, so on and so forth. So there's a tremendous amount of information that you can get with just that little device. So not only just the energy, but also predictive maintenance and preventative maintenance. We're seeing a lot of our customers use it a wide variety of ways. By the way, do you guys mind if I read a couple of things off the chat real quick, just to make sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So, by the way, thank God the CTO's here, because it said, one of the questions was, can you explain how the HotDrop is powered? And EC said it's self-powered by harvesting the current amps flowing through the wire. And the question was, so is it using induction or direct? And it's harvesting the magnetic flux. Okay. What? I thought that was in Back to the Future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're in the future now,
So you guys have basically brought Back to the Future, the TV show, to real life now, is what you're saying.
Are you talking about the flux capacitor?
Yes.
We're working on Mr. Fusion behind the scenes too. So it harvests the power. It's the magnetic field around the wire that we inductively charge. It's the same technology as, like, when you have a wireless charger for your phone and you're at the airport or whatever, and you throw it on a table and it charges in the background.
Okay.
It's basically taking that magnetic field that's around the wire and inductively charging off that.
I got it. So, and then Chris Gunn in the chat said, these are CTs, right? And my understanding, the CT is short for what? Current transformer? Is that what that is?
Yes. Yep. Just to use, explain what it is. So it's taking the current and transforming that into an energy reading. What's unique about us, where we have our IP around it, is we're able to do both of those things in parallel. So we're, every minute we're able to collect enough data to give an accurate reading. We're also able to, store enough energy from, to be able to, harvest the power to keep the device powered. So I don't think there's any other device on the market that's doing both of those things at the same time. And that's one of the unique things about the product.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then like you're showing there the different sizes. You got the little guy, which goes up to 300 amps.
Yep.
And then you got some of those big boys there. Oh, look at that.
One.
Oh,
Mark's
there it
got
is.
the big dog. What is that one?
Yep.
That's 4,000 amps.
Wow.
So that'll go around the, usually around a bus bar inside of a, main panel coming in from the utility at like a commercial facility.
Do we have any of those in these images?
Yeah. So the one that's the two that are on the right, sort of right above where you're hovering, down
right here.
right there. That's one that's a bus bar. I was actually on the site for this install, which I don't typically get to, but so this is the bus bar. There's basically, it's a giant metal bracket that the energy is running directly through. And then from there, it gets split into the wires that go into other parts of the building. So if you want to capture all the usage from, this phase inside this, this is the 3 phases. The picture right next to that has all 3 of them side by side. Yeah, you can see them in there. So that's the 3 phases of the main power coming into that panel. And we're monitoring phase A, B, and C. All of those, in theory, they should be very balanced. But in reality, there's often some significant differences between each phase depending on what's running. And that's actually what'll drive that imbalance. That's what can drive that peak capacity tag in a lot of cases. So, there may be 1 or 2 phases that are over dependent, overly relied on inside the building, and the loads end up, skewing the results as far as what the utility thinks the energy use for the building is.
So you're saying that the red is 1 phase, the blue is 1 phase, and the black is 1 phase?
Yep. So that's phase A, B, and C.
Okay.
We're monitoring all 3 of those, and then we're able to give sort of the total view of the energy in the building because of that. We're also able to tell you, are you dependent too much on phase A, and is that going to drive, higher energy costs from the utility than if you had, did some minor rewiring work to connect loads across B and C a little bit more. So,
okay.
Yeah,
that's interesting. One of the questions in here was, how do you integrate the data into third-party platforms? And we can tell you from myDevices side, a lot of times we're sitting, we have a visualization platform, and I'd say half the customers that we have use our visualization platform. They put their, logo on it. But I'd say the other half of our customers actually flow the data directly through their platform. So they use us, let's say, kind of as a middleman. And the reason they do that is because you could literally buy a kit from us with the HotDrop, the gateway, a LoRa network server, all set up, plug it in, and it just simply works. And then Cam, you want to go back and show like the integrations of, how the data can flow out. So we have a full-blown API, but you also have the ability to just set up like a webhook, a JSON webhook, and just make the data flow northbound by just putting in a URL. And not only are you getting the data off of the device, the telemetry off the device, but you're also getting all of the metadata. So you're getting things like, when it was installed, where it was installed. And then actually, if you go back also to the device, so that's just a plain JSON that will go anywhere. You can also send it to Azure, AWS. It doesn't matter. You can send the data anywhere. And because you're mixing and matching HotDrops with everything else, you have one platform that sits in the middle that funnels that data, and you can put alerts on it and stuff. But if you show the device setting, Cam, of the HotDrop, I'd like to talk about what we mean by device configuration. So you'll see inside of here, you or your end customers can decide what readings are displayed. In the background, we're collecting everything, but you just check these boxes like, oh, I don't want to show kilo ampere hour or whatever that is, right? So you just uncheck that. And then for the end customer, it doesn't show up, but it's still collected. So if you northbound the data, it's still there. But also you can enter in the voltage. So being more precise. So here's user input, or if you have a power factor you need to apply, or if you want to change the units of measure from kilowatts or watts, you have that ability. And you can do things like we added this thing for runtime. So you have the daily reset time. So every 24 hours, it'll reset. And you'd say, well, here's the current threshold. So this machine will start running, after this period of time. So there's all these different settings. So that's your configuration capability. So again, it's like this middleware that sits in between, you've got the visualization if you want it, but if you don't, you can send it to any third-party platform like instantly. So that's not an issue.
Just noticed on that there was a thing that said multiplier. So I'm guessing that's something where you can change it from like 1 to 2, or give it a value like that. That's actually really great, because a lot of cases someone's only installing one HotDrop on, like, say a branch circuit, and they're monitoring that. There's actually 2 wires that use the same amount of energy equally, though. So if you multiply it by 2, you get the total for that circuit rather than having to install two HotDrops.
So interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, and these are the little tidbits that as you start to deploy into these projects, right, you stick the thing on there, and then you get some feedback from the end customer that's like, hey, it would be great if, and we run through that all the time. And because of the way we've built our technology, we can very quickly make modifications and add these kind of fields like, oh, we need a daily reset time. We want to do runtime on a 24-hour basis. Okay, no problem. There's a field in here, and now you can set that manually. Or if you wanted to do runtime based on a week or based on a month. And that's true for, and this is where we're saying, adding value to the solution holistically is, we've got over 1,100 sensors that all fall in line with this same process. You're able to mix and match, single vendor, we provide you the sensor, scan them in, it instantly activates inside of that application. And the fundamentals of how we configure the way the HotDrop works to runtime or put in a multiplier and all of that, we can do for other sensors as well, for vibration or for leak detection or for asset tracking, to really build a very specific solution, but very quickly, so that you can mix and match all these devices. And you'll see in some of these accounts, and this is one, Delfingen, these guys are in the Philippines. They've got a warehouse where they're monitoring all kinds of equipment. This is their white labeled version of our application, but they've also got some temperature sensors and other things on here as well. So they're mixing and matching different solutions, and they've got some dashboards that they put together that kind of show these data readings and everything. So what we really enable to do is instant quick visualization. So for those of you out there that have a project, your client needs this, or maybe you need something for your internal operations, we can get you a HotDrop and some other sensors, scan them in really quickly, and instantly have some level of proof of concept that can then be instantly integrated to Azure. We have Power BI integrations, so you can do custom reporting as well. So we become sort of a single source to not only acquire the sensors, but to then fine tune the solution very quickly and then integrate northbound, as Kevin was saying, into other applications to enhance work ticketing systems or building management or energy management. So the collaboration between myDevices and Utility is, first of all, get your project off the ground in days, right? There's no programming, no provisioning, everything's plug and play, it's instant, but then scale that to thousands of sensors, thousands of locations very quickly as well. And that's really what we specialize in. It's the fine tuning and then scale. And there's services behind that we provide. We do weekly calls with our platinum partners where we're digging into these use cases and we're making suggestions about, hey, in this other use case we did a 24-hour machine runtime cycle. You might want to put that into your app too, or your device too. Or this sensor works really good paired with this sensor, So we've got the knowledge across thousands of sensors to really help you guys out there build your solutions and take them to market. And we've got the software tools that allows you to do it as well. So that's kind of on the myDevices side where we fit in with all of this. And when you've got a device like the HotDrop here, there's so many use cases and so many projects that have been doors to.
We love it. Let me go into the chat real quick. So one of the questions from John Ringness is, great stuff. What's the accuracy of the sensor? And are you selling these in Canada? And somebody in your chat from your team, I think, answered the accuracy. But if you guys want to explain that.
So we have, for every HotDrop that's manufactured, we get a calibration log from the factory. The maximum margin of error that we accept for any device is 0.17%. So 99.83% accuracy. That's calibrated at the factory. We have a serialized SKU level log for each of them. And that actually exceeds every ANSI standard, sort of the standard for energy metering. 98% would be generally considered revenue grade. The highest revenue grade standard they have right now is 99.8. It's called the ANSI 0.2 standard. So we actually exceed that as well.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. If you guys have those certificates, I'd love to be able to put those in our resources so people can see.
Yeah.
Pretty
So
cool.
any device, we can certainly work through it. Every device that we sell, we have the individual serial number, device ID level, calibration log. So
yeah, we do that a lot, like with temperature monitoring for vaccines or pharmaceuticals, that we do a lot of, there's NIST certifications that prove calibration and accuracy. We can just drop it right in the resources section here, so that it's tied to that device. Yeah, it'd be great. Yep.
Okay, another question. What Michael, I'm going to butcher his name, Selzy, I think. Michael Selzy is asking, what is the sample rate in seconds? Do you guys know that?
So it can sample as fast as 3,300 samples per second. That is a true RMS calculation. We are typically balancing sort of the need to power the device and measure. So I don't want to say that that's the sample rate in every scenario. There's also ways, it's not our typical use case, but there's actually a micro USB on the device. There's, instances where we had one customer, their project required really fast sample rates, as well as faster than our typical minute-by-minute transmission. And they were, for what they were willing to do, they basically ran a cell phone charger to a wall wart and plugged it in into the micro USB. But it's engineered to do 3,300 samples per second.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I know one of our customers, we were getting a lot of data, and their chart was kind of getting really tight. Yep. So what we did was we modified our device template so that it packaged everything up. Even though it took all those readings, it then packaged it up so that I think it was like every 5 minutes it was giving it to them.
Yeah.
Even though the data was coming in like, but in terms of the visualization, we packaged it like every 5,
Yep.
Yeah. So one of the other questions is Canada. Is it available in Canada? Yes. In fact, like if somebody were to call us right now, we could literally pick, pack, and ship and have it in your hands this week, and you could be up and running the second you plug it in. So, yep, Canada supported. John is asking, are the sensors CSA approved? I don't even know what that is. Do you guys know what that means?
I'm not familiar with that. So the devices have gone through FCC from a certification process that carries weight in quite a few other jurisdictions. So on a, I would say depending on the size of the opportunity, there may be some hurdle from a regulatory approval perspective that we've had to work through. They'll recognize FCC, but they want their piece of the action as well. So we've worked through that, sort of on a case-by-case basis for specific opportunities, but they are FCC certified, and that has been, sort of the standard that's probably most universally accepted.
Okay, gotcha. And Nestor Martinez is asking, what is the range of coverage by the device to the hub? So if somebody wants to do the LoRaWAN.
I would say what's been great about LoRaWAN, I think Michael Austin, my CTO, may have put a long answer in the chat around this, but electric panel is typically a Faraday cage for every type of radio frequency. So, it creates interference, it blocks signals, all that sort of stuff. We're able to still get our signal out through, concrete, steel, through the metal panel. I would say typically around 1,000-foot radius to a gateway. Horizontally, and then multiple stories vertically. So, if you're doing a large facility, you may still need a, minimal number of gateways, be very similar to other devices that you're connecting that on LoRaWAN.
Gotcha. Okay. Nestor is asking a question, I think for the myDevices. It says, does your platform allow for multi-tenant options? The answer is yes, at so many different levels. So you have this front-end application that you could have your customers log into, and you can give them view, edit, or owner status. So let's say they, own this organization and they want to add users, you can give them that ability. Or if you just want them to view or edit, you can also turn off pieces in here. So this is the front end, and then there's a full back end application that allows you to manage multiple users and multiple companies and all this other stuff. So multi-tenant times 10 kind of. One of the other questions was, how do you measure downtime? So Julio Maldonado asked about measuring downtime. And the way we measure downtime is inside the device settings, you actually put what is the threshold for this machine to run. So every machine is a little different. So in this particular one, the threshold is set to 1. So basically, if it's above 1, it's running. If it's below 1, it's not running. It's really just kind of a UI trick that we're using to calculate the uptime and downtime. Okay. I'll skip over
CSA is the equivalent of UL in Canada. I see that. We are UL certified. I don't know that we've specifically submitted for CSA. If there's sort of recognition of UL, we have UL certification for it.
Okay. I received in the QA section, not in the chat section. Somebody asked, do these meters read exported and imported power at the same time? And can it be integrated with an inverter for control? Not sure I understand the question.
So the scenario that I'm most familiar with inverters is looking at solar production. So we cannot measure on the DC side of the inverter. If it's on the AC side after it's been converted, we can measure the output. So we are not, if it's bidirectional, that gets a little more complicated. One of the features of the product, I don't want to get too technical, but you can install most CTs, you can install backwards. And if you install it backwards, you're going to get the opposite number that you expect. So we self-polarize, which makes it dummy proof from an installation perspective. So if it's installed this direction, it's accurate. If it's installed that direction, it's accurate. But it does affect if in like a bidirectional flow, we wouldn't know if it's going backwards or forwards. So there may be other things that are more suitable for that. But we do monitor a number of solar inverters from a production perspective, looking at how much they're feeding into a system, whether that's to the grid or to a building.
Oh, is that where you think that question is coming from?
I think it is. Yeah, like a net metering type of thing where, it's like, hey, am I exporting or importing? We're not necessarily suited for something where at one moment it could be feeding this direction and another moment it could be pushing energy out because we self-polarize.
Oh, I get it. Well, dummy proof is good for guys like me.
Yes, I would say that for the small set of use cases where there's a downside, it makes it infinitely easier for the 99% of other use cases.
Got it. Okay, that's super cool.
By the way, I'm flipping through these pictures, and it's a little bit.
That's actually my house. So
which one?
No, the one that's so ugly. Just as an example, like one of the things that makes us so unique is how compact it is, how easy it is to fit into a tight space. My panel, I need to get an electrician in and just upgrade the panel to it. This is, like 1970s electric panel that's got way too many things that were done by people over the years. But I'm still able to connect in there and monitor the main power getting used in the building in my house. So, there's not really any other device that I think would fit into a space that tight. So that's the reason I threw that one in. If you run into all sorts of things in the wild. So, this is real world.
If we were to zoom in on where you have it clipped into, what is that? Is that the main power?
That's my main breaker for my house. It's a 100 amp panel.
Okay.
So I'm clipping it in on the red wire, the black wire. So residential, you have basically the 2 phases, not 3 phases. So for me to do the math on how much total energy I'm using, I double the value since it's equal across the 2 phases.
Oh, I see. And you put it on the red wire is what you said?
I did. You can put it either though. So that's what makes it sort of unique. I can put it on either wire and it's going to be equally accurate.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. And then what we would do is I would just put the multiplier 2.
Yeah.
I should literally walk outside right now, look at my panel.
Yep.
Yeah, everybody send us pictures of your panels. Let's see who's got the nicest panel.
So not to disparage another product because it's not a bad product at all, but you see the Sense in there. I used Sense for quite a while, and it was much harder to install. I'll just leave it at that. It's a good product, very hard to install.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And Ankin Labi Ajalabi, he says, is there a consideration for electric vending use case? From your guys' perspective, I mean, I haven't heard that one, but have you guys heard that?
I would need a little more context, I think, in order to answer. I don't know that I have enough to go
Right.
into that.
Probably the first thing we'd need to know is whether or not the phases are split
Yeah.
into the machine, right? If it's
Yeah.
just simply plugged into a wall,
Yeah.
then I would probably recommend they just we have like a wall outlet that you can plug into and do it. But that's just more, that's for lower amperage single. Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Okay. One of the questions is utility devices do not have batteries, which is super cool. And I guess, is it true you guys expect a 20-year service life?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow.
They're intended to be out there for, the building will probably have changed owners several times over before the device fails in the field. That's the goal.
Wow. That's impressive. Okay. Cam, are there some other use cases that that we should be showing on our side?
Yeah, I mean, I think we showed, that's why I like kind of going through these pictures. There's some interesting use cases in here, but I think the, I had, where is it? The different screenshots of the app that just show kind of some of the different readings that we get from it. We already kind of did that on the screen share. I mean, things like machine runtime for predictive maintenance. We haven't talked a lot about ESG. We talked about it a little bit, but there, at least from my side, I've been on a lot of calls recently, and that's kind of the driving factor where they're looking at the HotDrop device or just looking at energy monitoring, and we're recommending the HotDrop device, but it's coming from a compliance standard around ESG. So reporting on what I hear, and I'm not an expert on ESG by any means, but what I continue to hear is we used to check our energy, water, and gas numbers on an annual basis, and now we're doing it on a quarterly basis, like 4x the amount of time. And when you look at the labor associated with that, and the accuracy of how it's being done, which before was kind of like, it's fine, but now there's microscopes on it because it's actual compliance that's affecting stock values for companies that are publicly traded and things like that. So it's a really huge deal. So I guess, I'd ask you guys, do you see similar? Do you see requests based on ESG, and what's your take on it? Where do you guys fit in, and what does all that look like for you guys?
Mark, I'll let you take that. You're definitely dealing with quite a bit of it. So
sure. So ESG is actually a huge opportunity for us, real estate companies, portfolio companies. It's real estate owners. It's a huge deal, and the information they're obtaining from the utilities is just not accurate enough. It's not timely enough to push the boulder up the hill to get this done. And we're getting an enormous amount of requests in regards to sub-metering into large portfolios, both C&I, commercial and industrial, as well as residential.
Do you maybe can you go back to our photos? We actually have a great ESG scenario in there.
Yeah, just tell me where to go.
So the top right.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is these are the sub-meters of an apartment building which is in a campus, 34 buildings with I think it's about 305 apartments. And the challenge here is, how do you sub-meter the common areas from the tenant areas and report on this from an ESG perspective? So
ultimately,
that is incredibly cost effective and super easy and super fast to install.
So one of the things that makes ESG interesting is you have a reporting obligation whether or not you're actually the user of energy if you own the facility. So
right.
So there's these 305 apartments. The only electric bills that the facility owners get are for the common areas. Every other bill is going to their tenants. But they're being asked by their investors, by their auditors, to provide, we call it the envelope, all of the energy that's getting used in the complex. The utility doesn't have a mechanism to deliver that. You're never going to track down 305 tenants on a monthly or quarterly basis for a copy of their electric bill. So they had to find another way to get the data. So all of these submeters are powered off of this giant main breaker behind this wall here. So we're installing a single HotDrop for each of the 34 buildings or 35 buildings, and they're going to have visibility to the entire facility that they never had.
Yeah, interesting.
So I'm super curious about this. So I think I understand, but let me ask you a couple more questions because I'm a little confused. So you have main power coming into the facility. And if there's a complex, let's say they have 300 apartments, each of those 300 apartments, they are separately metered today because everybody's paying their own bill, right? Am I got that right so far?
Yep.
Okay. But let's say there's a laundry room, a gym, whatever, other parts.
Yeah.
Okay. So is the purpose that, but don't they already have separate meters for those areas as well?
They do, but what they're missing is so every one of these buildings has a meter for the common area. You know, if there's like 15 meters on 17 meters on this building, at least one of those belongs to the property owners because it's for common areas. It could be for the laundry, all the stuff you described with lighting, you know, for in hallways or exterior lighting. The other meters are all going to the individual tenants for their bills.
Okay.
The issue is, from an ESG perspective, they can't just report what they use as the owner in the building. They need to report what all the energy use in the buildings is and where, you know, and where that energy went. So they don't have that visibility. So there's 15 meters on this particular building out of 35 buildings. Just on this building, there's 15 meters that they can't see anything about. So every building has one power feed coming into it from the utility that goes into this main meter box here. And so we're metering that. We're shadow metering, what you call it, shadow metering. We're shadow metering the whole building from this panel. And we're doing that for the 35 buildings in that complex. And then they're going to have visibility to every kilowatt of energy that was used in the building on a minute by minute basis if they wanted it, but certainly on a monthly and quarterly basis.
So they'll actually go ahead and put it on to each of the tenants' sub-meters as well. Is that true?
They could. For what they're doing right now, this scope of the project, what we did is just inside these panels pick one of these two wires coming in and we're going to double it basically. So that's the scenario that we did for this project.
Okay.
But you could then go and sub-meter each individual unit, which there's actually a lot of value in that as well. That's one of the conversations for the next phase of this, because each of those units has an individual HVAC unit. Each of those units has their own appliances. Those are all things from a maintenance perspective that they're on the hook for as the facility owners. So if you knew where to pinpoint, you know, which units are the least energy efficient or which units are highest risk of breakdown, you would have a different maintenance strategy for the facility as well. So that is one of the things we're talking with them about as an expansion beyond just sort of giving them the building envelope.
That's interesting. If you guys were to rank your inbound inquiries in terms of like different use cases, is there something that pops like number one or not so much? Is it kind of really broad? Like, what would you say are some of the main use cases you're seeing?
I think that's pretty equal. I mean, we see a lot of ESG lately.
Yes.
Joel, you've been here much longer than I have.
So we get a lot of inquiries around, you know, lack of visibility into what tenants are using individually. So it's like a master meter for the building, and then it goes to a bunch of places and they don't know who's using what. We get a lot of those inquiries, a lot of equipment monitoring, whether that's for like HVAC in a commercial building, whether that's for, you know, I mentioned the phase 1 versus phase 2 ROI for this industrial application. That's a critical equipment monitoring application. I would say ESG went from being sort of third or fourth on the conversations, maybe last fall, a year ago, to being probably our number one right now. So it's jumped several places over the past year. But there are several, you know, it's not like that's 90% and everything else is 10%. It's, you know, probably, you know, 30-40% for a couple of the primary use cases. And we have another couple that are in the 20-25% range. So,
and there's actually one factor that really sticks out compared to other solutions in the marketplace. It's the real-time component, the real-time data and monitoring component that that you guys visualize so beautifully in your user interface. So the real-time has a huge impact.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that about the real time. We're not electricity experts, and because we have such a diverse set of sensors, we just have so many things, right? And when people were starting to do phase monitoring or electric monitoring using some of the other sensors, and I won't say who the other manufacturers are because they're good sensors and everything, but because they're battery powered, there's only so much resolution they could get. So they would snap on the 3 phases and you can suck that data out, but it would only read like every 5 minutes. But because you have to turn on and turn off, otherwise the battery would die. The fact that this doesn't have a battery in it, in self-powers itself, is just, it's blow mind. It changes everything. And by the way, so
spot on, Kevin, spot on.
Yeah. Somebody's asking, we've had a couple questions about security.
Yeah.
What's, yeah, go ahead. If you want to
I'll definitely answer that. It is a great question. I'm glad we're getting to it before we wrap up. We're possibly the most secure, one of the most secure LoRaWAN devices out there. So LoRa has obviously its own standard encryption layer that comes, just sort of universally. We actually have a second layer of encryption that we hard code in pre-manufacturing. So our chipsets, before they go into the devices, have an encryption key added at that stage. And then we have the standard LoRa encryption on top of that. So it's actually a dual encryption layer. Our devices pass through, before they come to myDevices and go into the platform that you guys manage, they come to our cloud first. That is where we do our decryption. So anything intercepted prior to coming to our cloud is going to be gibberish, basically. There's no way to intercept it and get any meaningful data out of it. So it's extremely secure. Having it come to our cloud also assists us in being able to do any technical support on the back end. It gives us visibility from a diagnostic and device health perspective. So, we're sort of uniquely engineered amongst, a lot of LoRa devices, and that we have that extra security built into it on top of, standard LoRa and on top of myDevices security. So.
Yeah, and that's on the screen here. I'm showing just kind of the standard topology of this LoRa connectivity and the encryption built in there. And then there's also on the myDevices side, a white paper that we have, which we can share, that shows, all of our SOC 2 compliance and all of that from a cloud, GDPR compliance, everything in here. So just layers and layers of security at the edge, with the HotDrop itself, and then all the way through the cloud, and then even our secure integration outbound. So yeah, just layers and layers of security from end to end, I think, between our two companies, as well as just the LoRa stack and infrastructure in general, and some of the security requirements on that protocol. So yeah, hopefully that's thorough enough, and it kind of helps with that question.
That's good. I think we covered a lot today. Is there anything on your guys' side, if you had one closing thought or one closing comment? And by the way, maybe there's other, I don't want to cut it too short, but is there any one closing thought that each of you guys would have that maybe you'd want to impart to explain the HotDrop?
Mark, you want to go first, or I can jump in?
I'll let you go first. I'll let you
go
on this.
I would say, what gets me excited, I joined utility around a year and a half ago. I'm sort of an energy industry veteran. I've done quite a bit of work on, sort of IoT enabled solutions in energy. What got me excited and why I joined utility is there's a lack of visibility. There's a lot of really, really compelling things you can do when you have access to data, but that enablement layer of actually just getting the data is, that's been a gap in the industry. And, the way I think about us as sort of this fitness tracker, energy data is really foundational to so many applications, so many use cases. And, what we're doing, and through relationships like the one we have with myDevices, is making that data accessible and scalable in a way it hasn't been before. So, I like to find out about new solutions that someone's built on top of it, and use cases I haven't thought of. And, I think, that's really, what historically has been done with energy data is really just the tip of the iceberg of what can be done. And so, I like knowing that we're sort of unleashing the creativity of the market and problem solvers with what we do.
That's great.
Good point. I mean, we are challenging the status quo. I mean, there are the big companies out there, and we are we are challenging them. It's kind of a David against Goliath. And what really attracted me is the fact that it's so minimally invasive to install, rapidly deployed, and accuracy, completely wireless. So I love it.
That's great. Cam, how about from your perspective? You talk to a lot of customers every single day. What's been the feedback you've heard?
Yeah, the installation by far is the first thing that everybody says, right? Like when you show the data sheet or you show the video of the device and it's just a clip-on energy meter as compared to something that needs to be hardwired or something that's big and bulky. I think that's the other thing I hear a lot of is typically you've got the AC current, that you stick the cables through and everything, but then you've got like the unit itself that's separate. And so you've got this thing that you've got to put an electrical panel or somewhere. And that's what people are used to or what they're doing now. So when they see the HotDrop, that's the first kind of aha moment. It's like, wow, that's easy, right? So, and it sort of blends with everything that we do as well at myDevices is we try to just make everything just so simple and so easy. We're really disrupting the industry that way. So I think combined, when you look at the fact that you can take the myDevices app, have the HotDrop, scan it, clip it, and now you've got your runtime, your energy like everything within seconds. I mean, there's nothing really that rivals it. So yeah, that to me is, it just unblocks. It's when I talk to customers, it's what we end up calling the first mile of IoT, right? There's this huge chunk of blockage in the front where you get a device and you've got to plug in some USB to it and write some code or copy paste some script and program the firmware. And then you get a LoRa gateway and you've got to like route that to a network server, then provision the key. Like there's all of this work that goes on and it's been a week, 2 weeks, a month. And then finally you're like, okay, now I've got the data, but I've got to decode it now because it's not working, all of that removed, just clip it, scan it, and now we can, okay, now let's get to the fun part or the useful part, which is what is the problem we're trying to solve and how do we solve it? How many do we need to solve it, right? And that's the fun part. So yeah, for me, that's the takeaway here is just skip over that first mile of IoT, jump into the project and start bringing solutions to your customers and clients instantly. Is it going to be perfect the first time? Maybe, but also maybe not. But at least we're at the point where we're solving the use case. We're not solving the programming issues and the developer issues in the front end. We're actually getting to the meat of it. So yeah, that's been my experience. And yeah, that's I'm excited.
Yeah. And I think for myself, what's interesting is, we're in this new time in history, recession, labor shortage, supply chain. I mean, and the use of sensors is so important now because you got to do a lot more with a lot less labor. Plus also the restrictions, governments are requiring organizations to report on these certain things. And the alternative sensors that we've found they're not easy. And not only that, they just don't provide the data. What I've been surprised at the ease of use, but I've also been surprised at the quality of the data just because of the frequency that it has. And I think the last thing that really surprised me is, like you guys said, like people are building solutions on top of this. Like, quite honestly, when we first got the device, I really only looked at it as, electric sub-metering. But then when we have these customers who are in factories clamping them onto machines and they're doing operational efficiency on their machines, I was like, wow, okay. And it made sense. Like it made sense. And then we had like multiple companies now doing it. It's kind of like, what? Like that was unexpected.
That was kind of mind-blowing. Yeah.
Like maintenance is huge, guys. Think about it. If you tip this on a compressor or on a cooler from a blood bank in a hospital, for example, and you can predict that the compressor is going out, and you can change it prior to this thing actually going out, and you're losing millions of dollars in blood supply. This is huge.
All of these value propositions, they reinforce each other too. The most efficient building is the one that's best maintained. The most efficient throughput from whatever the product is, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's hospital, is where you have minimum downtime for the equipment, where you have minimal loss, all that sort of stuff. So all of these value chains, ESG, all of that, they all weave together. And for me, it's fascinating just to see, where someone starts and where they end up in sort of that, solution journey.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you guys getting on with us today. And this is really valuable. This webinar will be available for rebroadcasting. People will have, be able to see that. We also recut it up and, take out some of the highlights, and you might see that pop up on social too. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you
Thanks
guys
for having
inviting
us. Greatly appreciated.
Yeah, if anybody out there wants to jump on a call to learn more, like in a private spinoff, we've got mydevices.com/HotDrop. I'll put it in the chat. That's a link specially for this webinar, so we can talk about the HotDrop and the solutions. That's thrown in the chat. But thank you everybody so much for the time. We'll have more of these webinars with solutions like this coming on a regular cadence. Again, thanks everybody for joining, and have a great rest of your week. And from the utility guys, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks
Appreciate
for having
the
us.
invite. Thank you.
All right,
guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye now. Bye-bye.